given that they are the party bringing evidence and the expert. If they believe that a day is sufficient, we see no reason to push back on that.
All right.
And we were just listening in live there to this virtual hearing where we're bringing you this breaking news that the presiding judge in the case against Tyler Robinson, accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk last September, just dismissed the defense's push to remove prosecutors. Judge Tony Graff issued an oral ruling on whether county prosecutors should be disqualified, which could have changed the course of this trial significantly. Robinson's defense team had asserted that the state had a conflict of interest since one of the prosecutor's children was present at the September 10th event at Utah Valley University where Kirk was killed. In just a moment here, we're going to be bringing in Jeremy Rosenthal, attorney in front of the show. But we did want to ask you at home, what questions do you have about the Tyler Robinson ruling? You can scan that QR code in the top right-hand corner of your screen or head to livenowfox.com/connect. Let's get those questions answered for you here during this live interview. I'll be popping this up in just a matter of moments, but for right now, let's bring in Jeremy Rosenthal. Thank you so much for taking the time, Jeremy. I know you've been on standby with us here waiting as well, so we appreciate you.
Happy to do it, and it's just like waiting for any other court hearing in my life. This is how they go.
Yeah, yep, exactly. Well, let's talk about what we did hear there from the judge. I know I had asked you off camera, did anything really stand out to you?
A really long, well-reasoned opinion by the judge. I think this was a long shot by the defense, but something that was probably worth it. You're always trying in a death case to create as much value as you can to try to avoid the death penalty, and you do that any way that you can. And here, what they're saying was, look, this prosecutor had a personal grudge because their child was at the event, was at the event where Charlie Kirk was killed. And what you heard the judge doing was reading one opinion after another, basically saying, look, here's where a prosecutor is a little too close to the fire, and this case just is different. And some of the opinions that the judge was reading was, look, okay, well, in this instance, back in whatever 2017, there was a case where maybe a prosecutor had been financially tied up with the defendant, and the defendant said, now we need to get a new prosecutor. And in one instance, the judge said that the prosecutor was actually a victim of a certain defendant's crime. And in that case, the defendant saying, look, this guy is extra out to get me, and that's not fair. And that was the right call then. But the judge is saying, look, that's distinguishable here. That's distinguishable from this case, because if the prosecutor in this case has a grudge, I can't see it. And not only that, it's just a little too what you would call attenuated. Really, anytime you're attacking the prosecution based on essentially an ethical issue, which is what this is, right? It would be a conflict of interest, saying that we are emotionally conflicted. Anytime you're attacking a prosecutor based on ethics, the main question the judge has to answer is, okay, fine. If you think the prosecutor's doing something incorrectly, how does it hurt you as the defense, right? A prosecutor has a duty to avoid the appearance of impropriety. But how does that affect you as the defense, right? That's not enough. You've got to show me where your due process rights, Mr. Robinson, are affected by this prosecutor. And the defense tried. They created an issue. It'll be an issue on appeal if he's ultimately sentenced to death or just a life sentence. They were specifically complaining about the death penalty. So if he doesn't get the death penalty in this case, then I think the point would be moot. But again, this was a very worthwhile motion for the defense to bring. It just didn't work.
Well, and I want to continue that conversation there, because what are the options now for the defense, and how is this going to impact the strategy going forward?
Well, you were trying to get a different prosecutor on there, and you were trying to sort of attach the decision to seek the death penalty to this prosecutor, and you were trying to sort of eliminate that. So it didn't work, and now the case is just going to sort of proceed as normal, and this could be an issue on appeal, meaning if there's a conviction in this case, they're going to come back and say, well, of the 48 things that this judge did wrong, this was one of them. And that's why you also saw the judge read out a very deliberate, very lengthy statement, citing the legal research, citing his opinion, because he knows that this is going to get reviewed on appeal very likely.
And Jeremy, we do have our viewers who are writing in questions. We do thank them. And as we typically do with you here, we do want to get some of them answered. So let's put this up here. And this comes from Christina saying, when will Tyler get sentenced?
Well, they got to find him guilty first. So he's going to have a trial. And you heard some of the scheduling today. One of the things that America got to enjoy there is what court is really like. And that is all the things that you see on TV are just a fraction of the excitement, right? Really what you're doing is getting everybody to go through their calendars, and then the lawyers are telling you about how they're available, how they're not available. As a lawyer, it's always important to let the judge and everybody else know how busy you are and how big time you are. So, you got lawyers, well, I got to be in Chicago. Well, I got to go do this and that. And I'm sure all that's true, but it can be pretty mundane. There's a lot of stuff to filter through here. There's a lot of motions that they have to filter through here. One of them the one that they were talking about at the end there was that there's the defense wants the media's access to be limited, and you actually saw a lawyer for the media talking about his schedule. So it's going to be a minute till this thing gets to trial. I doubt very highly. I don't know that will be in 2026.
All right, we do have another one coming in here that I also wanted to share. This one coming in from Alonzo is saying, do you think the defense is worried that the appeal was denied? We touched on this a little bit, Jeremy, but let's dive a little deeper.
Well, you would have hoped that it would have worked, right? If you were looking to exclude the prosecutor, you would hope that would get granted because this prosecutor recommended the death penalty or is seeking the death penalty. What's the worst thing that can happen? You get a new prosecutor, right? That they seek the death penalty too? Well, you're already there. So it was a shot that they took. Again, this is what effective defense lawyers do. They throw the kitchen sink at a death case, right? You've got nothing to lose. So you make every motion that's what would be called colorable under law. You can't make frivolous motions, but if there's enough facts there, then what happens is ultimately Tyler Robinson could, if he gets the death penalty, say, look, my lawyers were ineffective. My lawyers should have filed a motion to exclude this prosecutors and didn't. My lawyer dropped the ball. So that's also another reason why you see these lawyers do this.
Let's get a couple more answered here. This one is coming in from Jace, as he says, what does the prosecutor's daughter have to do with him being on the case? And really, that was a question I had for you, Jeremy, is really what was the effect here going to be?
Okay, so what the defendant was arguing, what Robinson was arguing was this. Okay, Mr. Prosecutor, your daughter was in the line of fire. Your daughter was there. You come home at the end of the night and your daughter is panicked. She's scared. She's this, she's that, the other. And so does this give you a grudge against Tyler Robinson? Tyler Robinson is entitled to a prosecutor that doesn't have a grudge. So that was the main connection that Tyler Robinson and his lawyers were trying to make. The judge didn't think that they got there, so the prosecutor stayed on the case.
And my question for you is, what really swayed the judge here to make this decision? What was going on in his mind to lead to this? Was there anything that was leading up to this that could have made him decide this?
He was very thorough in his reasoning. He read his opinion out, and I think a lot of those cases that he cited and distinguished. When we have what case law, right? Everybody's seen that on television when you're talking about different cases and different legal precedents. Every case is its own snowflake, and it's very, very rare to have a case what's called on point, meaning you can have a controlling concept, but every factual scenario is going to be different. And that's what effective lawyers do, is they say, okay, here's the case that looks like it controls, but depending on what side of the issue you're on, well, this case really doesn't control because the facts here are different, or the facts are similar here. And so what you saw was the judge listing out a whole lot of different cases that he thought were pretty distinguishable. I think any lawyer looking at this at the outset thinks that, look, this was a worthwhile shot to take. The defendant has to take it. But I would have been surprised had the judge excluded the prosecutor here.
Now, Jeremy, I do have one more question I want to share. As you can imagine, we have viewers tuning in throughout the minutes here. And so we did touch on this a little bit, but I did want to just reiterate for those who are just tuning in. If you're the defense, what's your next move? Appeal this ruling?
I don't think that the defense has what's called an interlocutory right of appeal on this issue. In English, what that means is this. You have a trial or a case that is pending. That case has to get to trial. And if you were able to appeal every little minute issue up and down the chain, the case would never make its way to trial because appellate courts take a long time. So what the courts say is, look, defendant, you collect all these issues, put them in a basket. If you lose, you appeal it all at once. So I don't know that the defense really has the opportunity to appeal this, at least not right now. If Tyler Robinson is convicted, then there will be an appeal. An interlocutory appeal is kind of a pause in the middle of the case. Sometimes the prosecution has a little more right in most instances to an interlocutory appeal, because if their case is damaged, it's permanently damaged, the defendant may still win, right? And we can always go back and do it over. On the prosecution side, if the defense wins, double jeopardy prevents the prosecutor from bringing the case again, which is why they have a little more right to appeal things in the middle of the case.
And to go off of that, Jeremy, just to retouch on this here, is the judge essentially saying that there is no conflict, or just that it didn't rise to the level of disqualification?
I think the judge basically said that it's not that there's an issue here, right? And basically he said that, look, if there's an issue here, I didn't see it impacting the death penalty. And another thing that the defense said was, look, you didn't call the daughter to testify, and that's because you have this hang up about the daughter. And so I think the judge says, look, I don't know that it matters that there's a conflict here. What matters is even if there was, it didn't impact it. So I think that's ultimately where the judge came down.
All right, Jeremy, anything else you want to add about this before we let you go here? Anything we may have missed?
There's a long way to go. And I think what everybody just saw is how a court operates. The lawyer's very professional, very prepared. The judge very prepared. And this judge is obviously a measure twice, cut once type of judge. He made it clear that this case is a priority. He made it clear that the lawyers are to be ready. And he's keeping kind of a strict calendar. Also, one thing that everybody in America kind of saw a little of the inside baseball in court is anytime a judge says, how long is this going to take, you can multiply it by 5. And everybody in the courtroom kind of knows that. So when the judge says, how long is this going to take, and somebody says, oh, it's a half hour, everybody knows that's not true. We heard it, the judge, one lawyer said 2 hours, and the judge says, well, I'm going to give everybody 3. And then another lawyer came on and said, Judge, we need all day for this. So yeah, that's how this goes.
All right, Jeremy Rosenthal, thank you so much for taking the time. We do appreciate it.
Have a good day.
And we are going to step away for that commercial break here on Live Now from Fox, bringing you that breaking news that the judge dismissed the defense's push to remove prosecutors. We'll be right back.